Hi, my name is Michael Rhodes, and today we're talking about the light and the shadow self. And the light self obviously is us at our very best. When our light is shining out, when our light is shining in, when we are literally a shining example to ourselves. You could also say this is when we honour ourselves. I often mention to people, they say, how do I know which is the right decision to make? And I said, there's a very simple question you put with it. And that is, does this decision I'm about to make honour me? And if it honours you, then the light self is dominant. This is the way we need to be. If it honours you, and that might mean it doesn't honour your parents or it doesn't honour somebody else. But if it honours you, it does honour your parent. It might mean that your parents don't like that decision, but I'm sure they raised you to be an independent person. And so when we honour ourselves truly, we honour all humanity, because all humanity is one consciousness, one energy. And that way we honour everyone. It might not seem that way, but that's how it is in a greater reality. And so our light self, the light beings that we are, basically, of course, we're talking about magnificent beings of love and light. And so when our light shines forth and our love is coming into a dominant expression, then life tends to flow very easily for us. We really don't have problems. One of the things I found in all my years of counselling, there were no problems, there were just people who did not love themselves enough. Their light was seldom shining. It was always darkness. And from that darkness there is the shadow. And so what is our shadow self? Our shadow self is the part of us that is rather negative, that looks at what could go wrong instead of what could go right. It's the part of us that sees how little we have instead of how much. And so the shadow self creates more shadows. And so their life tends to go downhill. And when we're talking about this, you need to remember, if you were to put it at a calibration, let's just say, and let's just take a calibration of 200. You would find that at least 80% of humanity calibrates lower in the area of shadows. So we're not talking about a minor problem here, we're talking about a major human expression. What could go wrong? Criticizing ourselves, judging ourselves, comparing ourselves. The shadow self does all that. And how many people do not criticize themselves? And so when we talk about criticism, let's be clear about this. It's a focus. And when it becomes a focus, it creates shadows, because the focus is criticism. If you started off with the premise, okay, this is brilliant, absolutely marvelous, but I can do better, then that's a good criticism. That's what I'd call a positive one. Because you're not criticizing, you're just creating a platform from which you can jump. But when you say, I'm not good enough, I have met artists who every painting they do is not good enough. And they then reach a place where it never really improves, because it's always been, most of their artistic life, it was never good enough. And so that creates a plateau and you can't get beyond it. Whereas if every artwork you did, you looked at and said, wow, this is brilliant, I can do even better, then you're going to improve all your life. And as it is in art, so it is with everything else, the very art of life. And I've met people like this, and you have met people like this. You may be a person like this. And it isn't bad or wrong, but it is a limit. And so when we have the shadow selves and the shadow in our life, we tend to get dominated by that. And shadow people attract shadow people. They can sit at their coffee table having their morning coffee and talk about what is wrong with the world and what is going wrong in their life and how things could be better. And how are you today, Jack? Oh, I'm not too bad. And how are you, Tom? I'm not bad, got a bit of an ache in my shoulder, but then I'm an old so-and-so. And so this is the conversation. And that isn't bad or wrong, but it is a shadow conversation. You do not hear them talking about how beautiful the world is and what a wonderful thing it is to be alive. Today I listened to an original of Louis Armstrong, What a Wonderful World. He spoke it. It's a very, very old recording, and he speaks it to music. And that Louis Armstrong had a life that was nothing but shadows. He struggled. He lived in a time when black was punished. You were punished for being black, when everything was a struggle. The racism was incredibly bad. And he lived through all that and struggled his way through life. And yet he was an optimist. In Louis Armstrong, the public saw the light self. That's who they saw, because he also looked for what was the best in life. And you've only got to listen to him sing What a Wonderful World and what a wonderful day and how beautiful things are. And you can feel he's in that. That's where he was. He lived in that place of seeing the beauty and the wonders of life. And he had every reason not to. And then you meet other people whose life is literally perfect, no hardships at all almost, and yet they look for what's wrong. An elderly gentleman I once knew, he always planned for what could go wrong. That was the way he faced life. We've got to do this just in case that goes wrong. So we always had to put the check and measures in case it went wrong. You know what? We always had to use the check and measures. Always, because it always did go wrong. Because his shadow self created it. And so this is the strange thing. You know, we are light. And as soon as we have negative thoughts and judgment and criticism of anything, ourselves, other people, whatever, the light goes lower and the shadows rise. And most people live their whole day in those shadows and hardly ever leave them. Whereas if you look at what is beautiful in life and look as perfect in life, even if it isn't in yours, you can look around and see where somebody, a friend might have a lovely, wonderful life and everything's going perfectly. And you focus on that and you're happy for them. That day becomes your day eventually because you're focusing on light. And so shadow selves have a long, long history. They've been with us for a very long time. The truth is, of course, we're magnificent, metaphysical, multidimensional, eternal beings of love and light. But how many people wake up in the morning and tell themselves that's who they are and have a day full of light and a day full of fun and humour and laughter? Not many people do that. It's a bit of a paradox that some of Britain's greatest comedians of when I was a young man were incredibly unhappy people. Benny Hill and so many like him. They had serious mental issues. They had issues of depression. And so their whole act in life was to be happy. And they did it very well. The quality of those sort of comedians has gone today. But I read a few of their autobiographies and the background is pain and suffering of so many of them. And yet they put on an act to the world of fun and laughter and happiness. Just the same as so many circus clowns. I've read about some of them. They paint on their face and they make a happy face and they can go out and be happy. And I read of one famous clown that if he didn't put on the clown face, he couldn't face anybody. And so he hid behind his paint, behind the mask that he painted on his face. And his was an unhappy face, because the truth was, he said, I'm an unhappy person. So he did his slapstick comedy and made everybody in the circus ring laugh. But behind it was an unhappy man. What I'm saying is time to take off all the masks, to wipe off all the paint, and to bring our focus back to who we really truly are, eternal beings of love and light. and to let that light shine through. And do you know that light will take away the problems? That light will shine through the shadow self and gradually erase the shadow. Because the more we focus on what is wrong, and in the world we're in today, it's not difficult to see what is wrong, but is it wrong? Do you know that it's wrong? Let's say for sure we don't particularly like it, but the template of humanity is flawed. It's seriously flawed. We're stuck in a groove of more of the same. Too much of humanity is stuck in the shadow self. And when it's as much as 80% stuck in the shadow self, then that is a seriously flawed template. And so the situation we're going through is breaking that to allow us to make a choice. We polarize now, everybody. And I'm sorry to say that probably most of that 80% will polarize toward their shadows. But there's always the opportunity for them to say, no, I'm finished. I'm finished with the negatives. I'm finished with what's wrong in life. I'm going to focus on what is right in life. I'm going to focus on my possibilities and make them my probabilities instead of what could go wrong. And so as we focus in that direction, then we are beginning to recreate our lives. And in this time of polarity, that is really what is taking place. Everybody is choosing their direction in life. They're choosing which way are they going to make their next incarnation. An incarnation back into the more of the same, or an incarnation into the future of new and greater possibilities. To break through the old parameters of thinking and of our emotions, and to move into new paradigms of expression. This is what we need to do. And so the shadow self has never truly served us. But the shadow self goes with being subconscious. And there's the problem. As many shadow selves there are as people live their whole day subconsciously. When we live subconsciously, there is the shadow self, because that's the old program, the old habit. And so it's time now to move away from that, to focus when you wake up in the morning, to focus, I am a being of love and light. Today I choose love and light. Today I will let my light shine. Today I will smile at people. Today I will engage people from a place of love and light. Today I will consciously choose love and light.